All right, 8.1.3. No issues and fixes. Oh yeah, it is a short patch notes, isn't it? Event testing for the Witches Festival, event tickets, combat and gameplay. Crushing Walls tooltip currently describes behavior that has not been fully implemented, and its value is incorrect. Okay. Subterranean's assault total duration should be 6 seconds, dealing the same damage twice after 3 and 3 seconds rather than its listed 3 and 5 seconds. Okay. Exploration and itemization, quests and zones, Tales of Tribute. I gotta get into Tales of Tribute at some point. I've been meaning to play. Well, yeah, new account keeps me away from stuff. Carved bone keys, now like its counterparts. Okay. Sorry. Alright. Exploration itemizations, dungeons and group content. Combat and abilities. Light and heavy attacks once again scale with the highest of your offensive stats rather than dealing a flat amount of damage. Okay, so we change that back. I think that's a good call. Reduce the damage of light attacks do by approximately 26% to compare what's currently on the live servers to ease back on their overall impact while retaining their importance in rotation. So this is what I thought they should have done from the beginning. You can lower light attack damage without changing how it scales and changing all the sets. But yeah, okay. So this should be a lot better. Has anybody been on the PTS yet? So instead of believing my theories, has anybody actually tested light attacks to see how they feel? Liar, what's going on, dude? Updated the damage scaling coefficients from fully charged heavy attacks to follow a streamlined model that looks at their total cast time, cooldown, and damage when paired with the spammable attacks such as Lava Whip to help reduce the DBS loss seen when you utilize heavy attacks instead of light attacks. Their coefficient will now be a total of 1 per second rather than varying between 0.97 and 1.12. This will result in the following adjustments. Sorry. Cooldown and damage when paired with spammable attack. Okay. One-handed shield attacks damage reduced by approximately 1%. Two-handed heavy attacks damage reduced by approximately 1%. Dual-wield heavy attacks damage reduced by approximately 28%. Wow. That's a substantial adjustment. Inferno, ice, and heavy staff attacks reduce damage by approximately 26%. Total cast time reduced to 1.8 seconds, down from 2.1. Okay. So a little bit faster. Resources have been reduced to retain some restore per second. Restoration staff heavy attacks reduced by approximately 6%. Lightning staff heavies were barely adjusted, reduced by 2. Okay. Bow heavy attacks increased by 1%. Werewolf heavy attacks reduced by 14. Full and Drung reduced to 7,500, down from 7,560. Okay. Wonder why they nerfed dual wield so much. I mean, I know it hits hard, and I know there's 2 of them, but I didn't think it was that much of a difference. Yeah, that's a substantial adjustment for dual wield heavies compared to everything else. I guess they're worried about the, like they said, the coefficient between dual wield and other things. But I mean, the gank specs that I've been hit with that are using dual wield heavies, each dual wield heavy's hitting me for 5k. And I'm in, a tank set. So 5k, so 10k for heavy attacks, 10k plus Calurians, 10k plus in cap. So that's 30k right there. Resto is buff, not reduced. Okay. Did I read that wrong? Increased, yes. Yep, my bad. Thank you for calling that out. Our original intent with the flat value rather than scaling was to target players who were boosting their stats beyond a set value, but ultimately it ended up dealing far more damage to mid-tier players than we anticipated. We have decided to go back to scaling modifiers and instead focus on reducing their ability to scale upwards. The new value is based off of melee spammable, where light attacks now deal 1/3 of that damage rather than 45% of it. It results in a reduction across the board, but by bringing these attacks down, we have been able to also spend more time shortening the gap between them and heavy attacks. Okay. Empower. This buff now increases your damage against monsters with heavy attacks by 80%, rather than your damage done with light and heavy attacks by 1800. Holy crap. Wow, they changed Empower to a PvE buff. We have turned this type of buff into a more niche playstyle focus buff that is meant to help empower more accessibility driven builds, as heavy attacks require less precision activation and frequency of inputs compared to their light attack counterparts. In addition to this, we have decided to remove the impact it can have in PvP environments to avoid re-enabling one-shot builds. Thank you, ZeniMax. Like, don't get me wrong, it is disappointing to see like a buff get eliminated from PvP, but at the same time, these are the types of changes you hope to see, like something that impacts one aspect that they're trying to do, provide accessibility, without impacting something else negatively. Like, this makes complete sense to me. I think that's awesome. Okay, 2H passes have been calling my name. Uh-oh. That's nice. That's really nice. Perfect. Animal Companions Dive. Cutting Dive. This morph now applies a bleed on targets for 10 seconds if they are not off balance, rather than refunding its cost if striking an off balance target. Wow. Really? This bleed does not stack like its original form. Curious about how much this bleed damage would be. That's interesting. I mean, I've already said it, I don't like the skill because it feels clunky, but if the bleed's okay, I mean, this might not be bad. Might not. Scorch. This ability and Deep Fissure morph now deal their damage after 3 and 9 seconds rather than 4 and 10. Okay. I'll just cast it every 3 seconds, to be honest. Like, I'm not going to wait this, which is fine. I think that's fine. The ability is now hit with 2 unique damage sources. The first hit deals approximately 14% less damage, while the second hit does 20%. Okay, well, never mind. 20% more? Okay, so I'm going to read the whole thing and then I'll read the developer comment. Does this mean 14% less than what the live value is and then 20% more than the live value? Or does it mean 14% less than live value and then 20% more than this 14% less? Does that make sense? I guess that's my confusion on that. We'll have to look at it. Reduce the cost of these abilities to 2,700 down from 3,240 to help improve their ability to be recast early for more DPS or faking your opponent out. Okay. Sub-Assault. This morph continues to reduce the time it takes for the second hit to go off, but this second hit does not gain the extra damage. Okay, so they're both 14% less for Sub-Assault. So it's 3 and 3 seconds. Please note this ability is currently not working as intended. Its time is still 3 and 8 seconds rather than the intended 3 and 6 seconds. Okay. The changes to Scorch and their morphs were done in attempts to try and help the class feel less intensely focused on buff management and allow for other actions in combat, while still trying to retain their burst-oriented nature to a more balanced degree when compared them to other burst skills and taking their total time before impact better into account. Original PTS iteration was ultimately too disruptive to those who are familiar with the class, as it threw off the timing of the skill by a second, so we have brought it back down to the original duration. Perfect. While also keeping its overall timer divisible by 3 seconds to help ensure a rhythm is felt with the class. By separating the damage, we can also better allow the skill to function as a burst skill or as a sustained DPS skill, whereas recasting it earlier results in more total DPS, whereas waiting for the bigger explosion will result in those dopamine printing burst combos. Fair enough. Fair enough. I like that they changed the reduction and Sub-Assault gets 3 and 3 now. I think that's nice. And then 3 and 9 is whatever for 20% more damage. The only weird thing is like, to me, it just feels like Deep Fissure is the clear best morph because you get Major and Minor Fracture with it. And so you wait 6 seconds, you still get Major and Minor, and you get this 20% more. I feel like Deep Fissure is just the go-to, right? Like that's what it seems like to me. I mean, I can wait 3 extra seconds, you know? So instead of doing 3 and 6 seconds, I'm okay, you know, waiting. That's a valid question. Okay. We'll have to look at it. I mean, so from a PvP perspective, and tell me if I'm wrong. Are we sure Sub-Assault is nerfed by 14%? I mean, maybe it's not. But it's listed here. Reduce the time it takes for the second hit to go up, but the second hit does not gain the extra damage. So I could be wrong. But when it says here, this second hit does not gain the extra damage, I'm assuming that all of this is applied. I could be wrong, though. We can look at that. That's a good question. That's something worth checking and looking at. So yeah, if it didn't take the 14% less, if you're not taking 14% less, I mean, maybe that's the niche where Sub-Assault is better. That's a good call. I don't know. We'll have to look at it. I don't want to make any blanket statements. This is a lot of changes for one skill, and some of them are written kind of weird for my brain right now. So we'll have to go look at these. Maybe Sub-Assault is just 2 ticks of live damage. Possibly. I don't know for sure. But I do have a Warden on live, and we can just transfer over to Sub-Assault and see the differences. Just transfer between PTS and live and see what the damage is with CP and everything. Oh, we might be on the EU server. That might not work. All right, next thing. Flurry. Fix an issue with this ability and its morphs are being treated as damage over time in some cases. All right. Cutting defense. Fix an issue where the damage from this node is not proccing enchantments or poisons as advertised. All right. Fix an issue where Ember and... Okay, I don't care about companions. I'm sorry. Oaken Soul. This item now grants you Minor Slayer, Minor Aegis, and Empower. Look at that. Just 100% uptime for 80% more heavy attack damage. And I think this is fine. I think this is fine. I've talked about this a lot. I don't want to keep going into Oaken Soul, but not everybody watches all of my videos, and so I'll say it again. But you know, if you're portraying Oaken Soul as the utility mythic, it should be the utility mythic. It shouldn't be the utility mythic and the best tank mythic and the best PvP DPS mythic and the best healer, like the easiest best healer mythic. And that was the problem that it originally was. It was just giving way too much. And so I think these adjustments are good. And looking at Oaken Soul, I think it's still going to be used in PvP. Being able to stack major minor heroism is still going to be really nice. You still get a decent amount of damage for it. And yeah, like just having those buffs with 100% uptime is just something that you don't always have. So I think this is good. We've been keeping a close eye on Oaken Soul's heated debates throughout the PTS cycle, where the nerfs were noted as justified in PvP environments. Yep, but ultimately hit the set a bit too hard in some PvE scenarios. We opted to avoid enabling too much damage on the set by adding major versions of Slayer Aegis, as those buffs are meant to be sourced from trial sets and to encourage coordinated behavior for groups. Instead, we went with the much more readily available minor versions to help out players who may not have access to trials gear or just have other sets they'd rather run. There you go. In addition, we wanted to add the new Empower buff, which is by design now focused on helping accessibility. Exactly. Perfect change. Just like this ring is, so it was a stars aligning moment that we think will drastically help set Claw back some of its power without showing up on veteran players' bars as frequently as we saw. No notes. Well done. Like I think that's the perfect change. What do you guys think? Companions are endgame, you toxic casual. My bad, sorry. I still think Oaken Soul is good. Like in PvP. It's still good. It's very comparable to other mythics. And not having to run a back bar and still having that strength and power is going to be valuable in quite a few specs still. I still think it'll be ran. And I'll try and try out some builds and everything and post some stuff on my channel. Because I've gotten a few comments from that too, like, oh, if you still think Oaken Soul is good, you better post builds. Okay, I'll post some builds. I promise. I'll try and post some Oaken Soul builds. And if I'm wrong, I'll say that I'm wrong. I have no problem with that. But yeah, I think this is great. I think these are really good changes. It's good for both, right? Once again, another good change. Nocturnal's Ploy. Increase the cooldown to the set to be 15 seconds, up from 2 to reduce the rate in which it can actively dispel effects from a target. Good change. Really good change. Yeah, I think this is a good change. I said it last week. I think it's better to err on the side of caution with a set like this. You could always buff it later, right? Like if you can't, I'm just going off of history. I don't know if you guys saw Sawman and I and Nice's video from a couple days ago. It's on Sawman's channel if you want to check it out. We were talking about changes made in the patch or in the game during the patch, how many times it's happened. And it hasn't happened very often. The ones that I thought of were like Slodes. That was, what, 3-4 years ago. And then you have the Necro Bash Ultimate, which was changed on PC and was never changed on console. And then what was the other live change? There was like one more that I could remember. And so it just doesn't happen that often. And so I think it's better to look at a set like this that could potentially be abused, and knowing that, you know, you're not prone to change things in game, err on the side of caution and say, you know what? If it's still not strong enough, we can buff it later. And, you know, that way we're not, you know, we can fine tune it down the line instead of absolutely breaking it for 3 months. Because 2 seconds was game breaking. Like I was 100% going to run this on everything. You just had to build around Oakensoul with the change? Exactly. Yeah, I mean, instead of getting major, you get minor. You can run things like Danger Trickery for healers, as an example. Get major and minor heroism still. Not as much heroism, but still a lot. Second major minor's a lot. Is Nocturnal useless or still busted? It's not useless. I don't think it's useless because removing somebody's recoveries by 30% for their entire duration of their potion is like absolutely screwing over most builds. And so the fact that you can remove a buff and it can be a recovery or something else, like, I would say this is on the higher end. I don't think it'll be abused, but I could definitely see groups wanting to utilize this set to attempt to whittle down like a healer or something like that. I don't know. Like, this is one of those, like, I don't think there's a middle ground for this set. And I've said that a couple times, but either this is completely broken or it's not going to be used a ton. I don't see how there's a middle ground with this set. So Beta Slayer and Power PvE buffs, they're finally starting to learn. Yeah, I think it's awesome. Rothgar, yes, good call spots. Yep, Rothgar was also a change mid-patch. That's the third one I was forgetting. Like to see a mythic that gives minor Slayer and minor Aegis with no downside for the same reasons to put the Oakensoul notes. Yeah. Yeah, that I think that'd be cool too. I agree with you. What's going on, Guardian? Bagging low CPs until they give current fissure back, and bagging high CPs until they put dots back to 10 seconds so I can put flies back on bar. Okay. Nocturnal's still going to be best in slot for XV1. Yeah, I still think there's going to be some groups that'll try and utilize it. And I think it's better to err on the side of caution. Because you don't have a way to recover potion recoveries. You know, armor buffs, rally, whatever. Like, you can recast those. But those, like, once they're gone until you get your next potion. Is the cooldown based on the person using the set or or losing the buff? The latest iteration was each person could only get activated, lose a buff for the cooldown. So if you have, like, I know I said that terribly. The old iteration was if you had 5 people running Nocturnal's Ploy and they all casted at the same time on one person, the one person would only lose 1 buff every 2 seconds instead of losing 5 every 2. So it was a cooldown per player. But the fact that in group play situations you could potentially apply this to multiple people, I still think that this is a very unique set that has the ability to take out high priority targets. So, not saying it's useless, but it's more, I would say it's more on the useless side than broken. Change Nocturnals to where when you get a debuff status effect applied, you remove a buff from the player who applied it to you. That's an interesting thought. Week 5 better be crazy because they didn't list any Sorcerer or Necro changes. Yeah, no Sorcerer, no Magden, no Nightblade, nothing. Guardian, thank you for the tier 1, man. All right, let's finish the patch notes so we can talk about it. There we go. We finished the patch notes. Where's my Magblade changes? I was promised what, right? I'm not gonna lie, guys. Like, I am so excited for the thought of Sork and like ranged Magblade changes. I don't know if they're coming, but that's what I'm excited about. Next week. Like, I so badly want to see ranged Magblade changes. Yeah, that's the end of the patch notes. Best one so far. Like, these are by far the best ones. I have some questions about Scorch and Sub-Assault and those sorts of things. Get up on the PTS, though. See what it is. See what these are. Mag Sork was my first tune. Race changed it to Stam Sork, and I haven't played Mag Sork since. Yeah. I used to play a lot of Mag Sork. But, it's just not very fun in performance when performance is bad. Like, other classes, having mitigation is great, but when your mitigation is trying to activate a skill to stack shields, like, it just doesn't work. For other people, it does. For me, I just get way too frustrated and I'd rather not deal with it.